Hi, this is Rahman Sheikh. Welcome to Fortnightly Railway Transportation Systems podcast. I am the host and railway systems specialist. This podcast is primarily focused on railway experts who have vast amount of experience and contributed greatly to this amazing industry. This is not a technical seminar but focuses on feel good stories, individual journeys, their success and failures, motivating younger generation to kickstart their career in railways and creating a sense of pride for the railway people who devoted their lives on the most environment friendly public transportation. From Columbia University economist to logistics leader Joshua Dominic, now co-founder and CEO of Dreamstar Lines, is spearheading a bold revival of overnight rail travel in the US, inspired by seamless rail systems abroad. He is addressing the vast 500-mile gap, trips too long to drive, too short to fly, by crafting a luxury hotel on rails experience between Los Angeles and San Francisco. With a 2024 MOU secured with Union Pacific, concept interiors designed by BMW's Designworks, and service slated for launch by 2026, Dreamstar promises to bring comfort, convenience, and sustainability back to medium distance journeys. Join us as Joshua reveals why America is late to the sleeper train renaissance and how his entrepreneurial vision is changing the journey for good. Hi, Joshua. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Really happy to be here. Thing I want to update, it's ahead of the 2028 Olympics. That's the goal of when we'll be up and running.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think in some of our earlier information, it might have said 2026, but we're now targeting to be just in time for the Olympics and hosted in Los Angeles in 2028.
All the best. Keen to see that. So, apart from my intro, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, that was pretty good. You touched on, my name is Joshua Dominic. I live here in Southern California, and I am one of the co-founders and current CEO of Dreamstar Lines. With Dreamstar Lines, we're going to be building trains North America, starting with the US of A. And I'm really excited for what's coming down the pipeline. I think people are going to be delighted to see what we come up with. We're going to dramatically change how folks travel across America.
Let's deep dive. So, Joshua, you have seen firsthand how efficient and premium rail systems work overseas. I think that's the one which inspired you.
Yeah.
Why do you think US passenger rail has lagged so far behind the rest of the world?
Well, I think that it, like many things, that why is the world in the state that it is today? You have to look at history. I'm a big proponent of history. So most immediately, you can look at what happened to rail in 1972 with the start of Amtrak, and the way that was set up. But you can even take a longer perspective of like, wait, how did rail in America work? And like, why did that lead to Amtrak eventually? And the short version of the answer is that tracks in the United States are mostly owned by private companies. So that is one area that is fairly unique compared to other parts of the world. So in the case of private rail ownership, there's just different incentives that are in play. And so a decision was made that the United States infrastructure was going to focus on freight. So as a result, we have a great freight rail system and one of the best in the world. But that came at the cost of our passenger rail system, because with our policies and regulatory apparatus, we chose that's not going to be the priority. We're going to focus as a country on building out our airport and automobile infrastructure. And that's what we did. And for a very long time, that was really, really good. Yeah. Those systems are now kind of, you think about the adoption curve of like, okay, you hit a point where investing more dollars into a technology, you don't see the same type of return. We've hit that point with those technologies. And now it's an opportunity for rail to shine in pretty much anywhere where you have a high degree of traffic between two fixed points. And with modern technology, mostly being the internet, rail starts to become a lot more interesting, because you can get on a train and you can sit down in your seat and you can start working immediately or doing whatever you want and be connected. Whereas when passenger trains went out of business, you got on the train and you brought a magazine, maybe a book, a newspaper, or whatever. So I think we're both at a different place than we were when it went away. And now is the time. More Americans today are taking trains than ever in most people's lifetime.
Amazing. That's a great news.
Yeah,
It helps environment as well.
that's true.
And your tagline, I really like the tagline, 500-mile gap. Journeys too long to drive, but too short to fly. How does Dreamstar Lines plan to reinvent this segment of medium distance travel in America?
Yeah. So right now we don't meaningfully have night train service, which I know sounds absolutely bonkers to anybody listening that's not from the United States. But trains are mostly considered an afterthought. So the best way to think about it is like trains are less than like 1% of all trip in the United States. Whereas in some parts of the world on particular corridors, you can see trains having like almost a 90% ride share, like particularly in Japan. Now, there are routes all over the world and different countries have it set up different ways. But in the United States, we really haven't pursued customer focused model in terms of, hey, where are customers going? Where do they want to go? How do we build a train service around that? And now we have the opportunity to do that, where I don't know if we tried to do this 10, 15 years ago, I don't know if I don't know if the market would have been ready. But if for people who've been following along, I mentioned more Americans than ever are taking the train.
Yeah,
That's true. But not only that, from a policy level as well, we're seeing a lot of policymakers who are interested in saying, hey, how can we make passenger rail better? Because they recognize, like, despite all of the flaws in our current system, there's people still do want to take the train. And I think you're going to laugh at this, but the biggest thing, in my opinion, that's not really going to, I mean, I guess you could have it show up the data. More Americans than ever have traveled abroad and they've experienced these things and they go, wait, this doesn't only have to be like a vacation only experience of like, hey, I get to my airport and then I get on the train and then I get to where I'm going or whatever it
yeah,
is. And so I think they have these experiences and they all wanted the same question that I did, almost 15 years ago. Why don't we have this here?
correct.
And I decided to do something about it.
Beautiful. You did pretty well, Joshua. Then how do you think your new company, Dreamstar, plan to change that perception?
So I think there's a really long case study, like a business case study of like how do you engage in mode shift is what it's called. So how do you change how people choose to transport? I mean, going back to like the 1840s when river boats became a huge way of travel in the US, you make them really nice, as it turns out. So right, if you look, do you remember, have you ever seen those old like jet advertisements like Pan
Yeah,
Am
yeah,
where everybody's dressed up and flying? That was a strategy. And the strategy was like, oh, look, it's this very nice high status way to travel. It's very nice. You're treated very well. I mean, never mind that half the plane was smoking and the planes were super bumpy, but there was a certain like an aura or a mystique. And that draws people to that. Like, ooh, I want to try that. And then once you get that critical mass of paying customers, you can take that profit and you can reinvest it into the product so that you can provide it at a cheaper rate and you can open up the market so that it gets better for everybody else. It kind of move downstream. More recently, in 1990, GM released a mass market electric vehicle and it completely flopped. Fast forward a few years later, a small little company called Tesla, they wanted to do electric vehicles, but they took a totally different strategy. We're going to sell a really expensive, not that great electric car. I think they took an old Lotus in their first models and they said, look, we'll sell it to the person who will buy it for 150K or whatever. We'll take that profit and we'll reinvest it into our product so that we can get a car in at, 70K.
wow,
And then they just kept repeatedly doing that until they have the Model 3. And now electric vehicles are not out of, they're not only a plaything for the rich. There's something that's broadly reachable for the average American. And I think that what we're doing with trains is going to work a similar
I
way.
hope so.
It's going to start as a very, very nice experience. And as the business model expands, we'll figure out ways that we can make it more accessible to the average American.
I believe you can do it. You look so excited, and the way you explain things it sounds amazing.
Thank
Let's
you.
keep the topic on the same line. You're focusing on overnight travel, and
That's
you
right.
also spoke about the model. So, what unique benefits does a sleeper train offer compared with flying, driving, or even a conventional daytime rail?
So I'm going to ask a funny question. What's the best form of transportation?
For me, it's rail.
Rail. Okay, great. So I always ask this question. It's a little bit of a setup, so forgive me. The best form of transportation is obviously teleporting. If I could choose, hey, how do you want to get there? Teleport. Yeah, I'm going to do that all day long, right? I just poof, I'm there. Great. I would.
Wow.
Right when you watch X-Men, you're like, oh, the guys that can teleport. That's really cool. Now, obviously, we can't do that. So, but if that's our North Star for if you want to transport people from point A to point B, how do you get closer to that? In this particular case, it's time, the time that you and I experience when we're going from point A to point B. So if you look at the door-to-door time that you're going to spend flying or driving, it can be anywhere from like 4 to 8 hours, depending on what traffic looks like. With an overnight train, if you have a 10-hour train, you're only spending about 2 hours of that time awake. And the beautiful part about an overnight train is that I don't know what your nightly routine is, but most people, they brush their teeth, they wind down, they take a shower, and the same thing in the morning. They brush their teeth, shave, do their hair, makeup, whatever. So those 2 hours, even when you are awake, they're spent doing things that you otherwise would be doing. And what's cool with a train is we can allow you to do that while you're in transit. I can't imagine trying to shave on an airplane, let alone sleep. Right. And so in my view, it's, there's 5 factors that we have found that people decide how they want to take which form of transportation. So it's price, comfort, convenience, scheduling, and environmental impact. So every single individual is going to have one of those is more important to another depending on whatever their value set is. What's cool about trains, especially with night trains in the beginning, we can actually be the cheapest way to travel. We can provide the most comfortable experience. We can make it very, very seamless. And we can leave at a time where it's very, very convenient, where you're not, if the train leaves at 9:00 at night, you can still have dinner with your family. Yeah. You can go get a workout in at the gym after work, before you get on your train to travel. You don't have to give up your time anymore. And to me, this is not all of our customers, but to me personally, I only have so much time. And by giving people time back in their life to spend it, I don't really care how they spend it, but to spend it how they want, the ability to do that, whether it's spend more time working, spend more time with their family, their friends, spend more time on their hobbies, I don't really care. But it's removing that kind of drudgery time where you're like, I'm standing in line waiting for this. I'm standing in line waiting for that. I'm sitting here waiting for the plane to take off. I'm sitting here waiting for the tray table to come down. Or even in a car, a lot of being in a car is just sitting waiting to get to where you're going. And you can't do anything else because you just got to hold the wheel.
100%.
So in my view, that's where trains become incredibly powerful, is they free human beings to do whatever they want while they're in transit.
100%. I can agree with you. I concur with you. And I can also relate that. So Dreamstar isn't just offering transport. It's offering hospitality, actually. So how are you designing the onboard experience? So for all the narration you just did, how do you really make it to feel like a hotel or an airline business class rather than a traditional train?
So imagine you drive to the train station and you pull up, you get out of the car and you hand us your keys. We'll take your car, we'll make sure it gets to the end destination, and you check into your hotel room like you would. Just, you can use your phone, tap in, boom, now you're in your private sleeping accommodations. You check it, let's say you check into a bedroom. You got a bedroom, you put your suitcase down and you say, I'm not really tired, so I want to go socialize. We'll have a lounge car where you'll be able to go order some light bites and some drinks, socialize with other passengers, where you can hang out there as late as you'd like before you decide, hey, I'm tired. I'm going to go retire to my private bedroom sleeping arrangement for the evening. You wake up, you get ready for your day. Maybe you have a shower, you do your hair, you shave, whatever. And then perhaps you start at the lounge car to have a small coffee or something like that. And then you're at your destination and it's time to go and you're ready to take on the day.
Wow.
That's the Dreamstar Lines experience.
Amazing. I would love to have a ride on it. Many people see US rail as the government's responsibility. What advantages do you see in a private enterprise approach? And how do you convince skeptics it can succeed?
This is a really interesting question because everyone has a different opinion. My view is that you can't just have, I don't want to see a situation where the government pays for everything, but then a private company just makes all the profit. That's kind of silly. But I do like a model where the government pays for infrastructure. That's pretty normal. We do this all the time in the US. I mean, if you look at our highway infrastructure, if you take people don't realize how much we subsidize our roads. Just the highway system alone, all of the taxes directly associated with automobiles, only about 50% of that covers the total cost for funding the highway system. The remaining comes from just the general tax. So even if you don't have a car, you drive. You pay for taxes on that. And my view is that this is actually not a bad thing. Like, I think we all tend to benefit when transportation is widely available and even perhaps subsidized. It means for lower costs. I mean, if it was up to me, I'd make transit costs for everybody basically as close to zero as possible so people can go wherever they want to go and do whatever they want to do. And so the way I see it working is that if the government can come in and pay for the infrastructure costs and help us expand the capacity so that more people can travel by rail. That's great. We also get the benefit of not needing to require the government to pick winners, right? You can have a competitive process so that ideally that the person who runs the best service is the one that
Yeah.
wins. I think that's what we all kind of want. I want the best service at the lowest price. Great. Like, what does that look like? And so I think that working hand in hand, I think the government does a really great job when they focus on fostering competitive markets, because then markets compete, and markets compete on the basis it's two things, right? What they have to offer people and price. Sometimes you can get a premium based on what you have to offer, and sometimes people just want the cheapest stuff possible.
100%.
But having a marketplace that allows all of these different companies to decide how they want to do it, I think that's how we're going to see it play out in the US, given our very long historical precedence of that's how they have done it historically. It's not how it works in rail today, but yeah.
Now, from the dreams, you just spoke how the Dreamstar is going to bring those dreams back to the US people. But let's go into the business. You said you recently signed an MOU with Union Pacific. Now, can you explain the audience the significance of that milestone for Dreamstar and for the future of private passenger rail?
Yeah. So when we started this, if you had asked, like, hey, who's the least likely to let passenger rail run on their tracks, people might have said Union Pacific. And so when we kind of first started this project out, they said, well, if you can get Union Pacific on board, like, great. And but it seems unlikely. So we said, okay. And we started talking with them, and it took some time, but we came up with a model that we're both happy with. And the purpose of releasing the MOU publicly was to signal that, hey, like, American Rail is ready to change, and that they're willing to work to figure out how we can get passenger rail online.
Great.
And so the significance is to signal that to investors as well as customers that, hey, get excited. This is coming.
Amazing. Everyone is keen to look. So people who are listening to you, probably they're planning to have at least a trip on it. So sustainability in today's world is a very, very big thing. So how do you think Dreamstar can balance luxury with environmental responsibility?
Yeah. So it's actually pretty easy on our parts. Like, trains just are not super polluting technologies today. They were historically, yeah, sure, absolutely, like burning coal to get steam. But today, I think if you take into consideration the number of passengers moved per output, I think the only thing that really beats us is like bicycles and walking. Like, it's just not a super huge source of emissions or pollution. That being said, it's my view that what the future of this looks like is it's going to go even lower. I think what's really exciting on the technology front is solid state batteries. So while airplanes, automobiles as platform transportation technologies, they have weight constraints, right? They really impact how effective they are. Rail doesn't work quite the same way. We can afford to have, I'm going to be a little dramatic, a whole car that's just a giant battery, and we can still run our trains. And so we'll be able to make the transition from using diesel electric, which isn't terrible. The modern ones are actually quite good on the emissions. To actually just zero. Like, my end state is I would love to see, I'm not sure where hydrogen will land. Like, the only emission is water. Like, oh,
correct.
That's cool. But I suspect that the battery technology is just going to get so good. Everyone will use battery technology. And then the way electrification, if at all, it happens in the US, I mean, it has happened in a couple key areas. It's just too expensive to electrify everywhere. But if you can electrify in the areas where there's the most need, so if you think of the most need, that would be anytime you need to accelerate or you need to go uphill, you can actually get a lot of the benefits at a fraction of the cost of, a full electrification system.
100%.
So yeah, that's what I think. I would love to see it if, each station, you had maybe a half a mile on each side is electrified. If you think about, just basic math, there's 10 stations. You electrify a mile, that's only 10 miles of electrification. That is significantly cheaper than having to electrify 500 miles of line. It's just a better use of either taxpayer dollars or investor dollars, whoever's paying for it.
100%. Joshua, let's speak about luxury now. You just partnered with BMW's Designworks on your interiors. What role does design innovation play in making rail travel attractive?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, right? Like, so I'll share a funny story of, like, we recognized the problem that we had is, like, well, how do you get people interested in rail? And I was speaking with my business partner, and we were like, well, the answer is obvious. You got to make it sexy. And we're like, well, okay, who do you know that has a reputation for making like sexy designs? And that people would recognize, and BMW came up as a choice. And by dumb luck, they reached out to us the following week and were like, "Hey, I don't know if you guys are interested, but this might be a good project to work on together." And we agree, and we love the designs that they came up with, and they've been people. The feedback has been incredibly positive.
Amazing. Actually, the whole thing looks amazing, sounds very nice to my ears, but it looks like dream, as your company's name, Dreamstar. Tell us, as for many entrepreneurs out there who are listening, what have been the biggest challenge in bringing Dreamstar's dream from concept to reality?
The answer might surprise you, and that is just explaining, like, customers get it immediately.
Yeah.
Like, once they understand, they're like, oh, I would love this. Like, cool. The joke that I often have is that we're looking for people who invest in passenger rail. The problem is they all died 100 years ago. So there's not a lot of people who have like a deep understanding in the investor class of like, how does rail work? How do you make money at this thing? And so just the rail industry is so big, so much history, and most people just don't know it. So I think the biggest, I don't want to call it harm, but like, I'll give you a great example.
Yeah.
How much do you know about AI?
Very little. It's very
little. But if someone says large language model, you like know what that means, right?
Yeah, LLM.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. An LLM. That type of tacit knowledge where you and I am not, maybe perhaps you are an expert, but
No.
I am not. But I know what an LLM is. The level of understanding that we have when we're talking to people on the business side of things that aren't particularly in the industry is just really low. There's a lot of education that has to happen. And so I would say that ended up being the biggest challenge of like how little people, like, for example, I'll give you like a really common misconception. Oftentimes people be like, well, how'd you get the tracks from Amtrak? And it's like, well, actually Amtrak doesn't own like those tracks at all. Like, and in fact, they don't own really any track, very, very little tracks outside of the Northeast Corridor. But like those types of just very basic fundamental things, there's not even like a common knowledge base that the average person I talk to knows about. And so I think that's been the biggest challenge, is really just educating people about how the industry works.
Amazing. So it's not just about the people. So how about you getting approvals, etc., from the government and making it to bring it into reality?
Yeah. I will say that most people have been incredibly like, oh, we like this idea. We wanted to see this happen. It just sometimes this is not unique to anywhere in the world. The government moves a little slow sometimes. And you know what? They're good, hardworking people trying to do their best and balance a million different competing priorities. So it's not surprising, but I would love to move a little bit quicker.
Agree 100%. Now, looking ahead to 2028, as you said, and beyond, what would success look like for Dreamstar Lines, both for the company and for the broader US rail industry?
I want to see a network of Dreamstar Lines overnight trains, and maybe even daytime trains, I don't know, all over dotting this country, in terms of it is no longer a novelty to get on a train the night before a trip, sleep through the night, and wake up at your destination. I would love to see train travel go from less than 1% of trips to 10% of trips. I would love to see greater access to some of our national parks, so you don't need to worry about having to drive 6 hours. If you could take a train, or perhaps to a mountain ski area or whatever. I think that if you have 2 points in space that see a high amount of, call it traffic, people traveling from point A to point B, trains become a very compelling option for people traveling. So yeah, I guess my answer is one and the same, is I want to see a network of these things, and I want Dreamstar Lines to run them.
Entire American rail network, yeah?
Yeah, that would be great.
Do you have any idea about, like, if from thinking from a passenger perspective, how much do you expect that I would pay to travel from Los Angeles to California?
So the way we look at it is in terms of what are people paying today? So what's the cost of a last minute flight, like a business class flight, or a flight in a hotel booked ahead of time, or the cost to take like a premium private jet? I'm using that in quotes. Jet Suite X, JSX is great service. Or what is Amtrak, like, even more importantly, what is Amtrak currently charging today for their train and being competitively in that
Yeah.
range.
Okay. So it would be a bargain. So you would have people. So, for example, if I'm traveling in your train, I would be paying somewhere an average money where I could experience a luxury hotel and a comfortable journey with all the facilities, Wi-Fi and all. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Did you design an office space in the room?
It's not going to look like a full-fledged office space, but yeah, there'll be an area where, you know, you'll have a table and you can put a laptop and you can get a little work done. I think that is going to be a surprisingly common thing that people want to do, which is surprising for a nighttime train. But yeah, I think that having all these amenities, Wi-Fi is a no-brainer. Like, you have to do that. Having smart outlets everywhere, more importantly, outlets that work. That's a common complaint. Having bathrooms that don't suck, that aren't dirty, you know, you don't stand up and hit your head. Just all these I basically took the laundry list of what do I hate about travel and said, how do I get rid of that with a train? And it turns out there's quite a bit you can do, especially on American trains, because we have big trains.
Yeah, agreed. So finally, if you could leave our listeners with one message about the future of the rail travel in America, what would it be?
I'll even go beyond that, not just rail travel, but like, we're in a once in a lifetime opportunity, like once in a probably every few generations, to radically redefine what our world looks like for the next 60, 80, 90 years. And there's a lot of really hardworking entrepreneurs, young politicians, and other members of the community that are working super hard to bring that together. If you want to make the world a better place, you got to go out and start building.
Amazing. Speaking with you was a great pleasure, Joshua. See, the time passed like this. Exactly the way you said, the travel would pass like this, and this 30 minutes passed just like that. It was a great pleasure having you on board, and I look forward for the great success for your project.
Thank you very much. Yeah, maybe we'll do a follow-up when we get closer to launch.
Sure. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Hey, I believe everyone listening to this podcast has got something to take away from today's discussion. If you like this podcast, please listen, follow, and share this podcast within your network. If you believe we should be sharing your story or someone within your network, there is a railway leader who should be here sharing his or her contribution to this industry, contact me on railwaytransportationsystems@gmail.com. Thank you for your time today. Stay safe and take care of yourself.